picture tells the truth. I carry every scar within, the proof I made it through. You can't erase the breaking, you can't deny the pain, but every wound's a witness that I'm here again. I am wounded witness, I am blood and bone. Every mark remembers, but I am not alone. I am torn and tethered, but I'm still alive. Wounded witness, this is how I rise. The silence tried to swallow me, the shadows tried to stay, but I became the echo that never fades away. You can't erase the breaking, you can't deny the pain, but every wound's a witness that I still remain. I am wounded witness, I am blood and bone. Every mark remembers, but I am not alone. I am torn and tethered, but I'm still alive. Wounded witness, this is how I rise. These scars are not my ending, they're the story that I keep. The body holds the memory, but the soul refuses to leave. I am wounded witness, I am blood and flame. Every scar a lantern, every bruise a name. I am torn and tethered, but I'm still alive. Wounded witness, this is how we
Hello. Hello. Oh my goodness. This is There it is. There it is. Oh my gosh, you guys. It has been so long since I've come live that I was like, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I miss it, right? I miss you all. And getting ready to come back, you know that I am. So, but I want to say thank you for coming here. And I want to also wish Sharon a very happy birthday because it is her birthday, and I hope it's been amazing, and I hope it just continues to get amazing. I, for one, love birthdays. Even before I've, became a survivor of staring death in the face and surviving, right? Even before that, I did, but certainly since, right? Every moment is precious. You know, there's so many moments in this life that we don't want to be inside of. Um, and yet somehow we persevere, we drag ourselves through, we we make it. And I want to share a little bit about that today, right? And for those of you that don't know me, that might be here that don't know me, my name is Jen Lynn. I am a founder, co-founder, and of Sing Your Song, which is a movie that is bringing about 1 million people for a people's premiere. We bringing the power of story and the power of people together before we even start filming. Okay, and there's so many reasons for that, and all of that's fixing to be available to you guys to go see on a really fun website and be able to share and all of those things. And this little beauty over here, she's going to be biting me, and her name is oh my gosh, where's my cat's name? Just totally um, flew my mind. Bird. This is birds. Birdie. Because she chirps, right? So, all right. Let's get started. Let's get started. Oh, and Sharon, I wanted to remind you that we're so happy that you were born. Um, that I hope that your life continues to touch, shape, become part of other people's stories. I hope you have all the impact that you dream of, all of the change. Um, I hope that there's this opportunity to celebrate your life together in real person one day. But for today, I'll just have to honor it here, and all of your beauty, all of your complexity, your fragility, your resilience, all of your muchness. I'm so glad that we are friends, and I love you. Okay. So this day today is August 6th, and it's also my stepmom's birthday. It was my very first mother-in-law's birthday. And it's a day that um, I come to share a story about myself and my first wife, and her name was Amy. Okay. Some years I've written it, some years I've spoken it, um, some years I've carried it in silence, but I have continued to tell it because silence very often is like a second burial. And because a story left untold doesn't just disappear, it just simply continues to live inside of the body of the person that is carrying it, right? And I know that all of us know what it's like to carry grief. So this year I'm coming to this, reading though from a different place. Many of you know that I have been navigating my own physical recovery while also working beside my twin brother that experienced a devastating medical crisis during a routine day surgery, and we have been moving through hospitals and rehabilitation centers and decisions and advocacy and uncertainty, fear, exhaustion, right? The work of being able to find new ways to communicate, because language itself has become something that is too much for his brain to do right now. So he had a hemorrhagic stroke, essentially, completely lost his ability to speak. He completely lost his ability to communicate. He can understand everything, but he can't get anything out. If he tries to speak it, write it, type it, it doesn't matter. And I have, been reminded again, right, that life can divide itself, and it does, into these before and these after moments, right? And so, and I've also been reminded that surviving is only one part of survival, right? It's only one small part. Afterward, the mind must understand it, and the body has to understand it, and the heart must somehow learn that the danger is actually past, and even when the consequences have not. And that's challenging. I've been reminded that love doesn't disappear when the words do. So this year I'm not reading these next two chapters or pieces from the safe distance of a story that has ended. I'm reading them while standing near that threshold between what was, what is, and whatever comes next, with intention before um, we do move forward. I just do want to offer a gentle content notice if um, you don't know my story. The readings will include um, subjects of suicide, domestic violence, coercion, a traumatic loss, grief, and the complicated reality of loving someone who was also capable of causing profound harm. So, um, please take care of yourself while you are here. You can step away, you can turn the volume down, you can listen with commenting or without. You can cry, be angry, feel numb, or feel nothing at all. There is no correct way to receive the story. It's just something that happened. And I also do want to say this very clearly. I'm never here to turn Amy into the worst thing that she ever did. One moment to taint what she is, and I'm not here to turn myself into some kind of saint because I survived it. Human beings are we're far more complicated than that, aren't we? Amy was a whole human being. I was a whole human being, and our son was. And what happened to us was real. And so today, I'm going to read two pieces, and together they hold both the event and some of the long interior journey that followed it. They're not just simple stories about death; they're stories about what remains in me. Um, and about the innocence, the identities that we lose, the truth that we uncover in our lives, and the selves that may eventually rise from where we were certain, you know, from when we rise from those things that we are certain are going to end and destroy us. And um, it's just an invitation to witness. And so, with love and with truth and with room for all that can't be made simple, I'll start with a little background of a story that I call I Will Be Your Angel. Okay. Um, and this is printed in a book, and so is the next. and try to get through that. La la la. Here we go. Gotta find my notes. And I gotta put on my reading glasses, y'all, because I'm fixing to be 48 next month. And I've been wearing glasses for a long time to read, right? And also like I have a separate pair of glasses to see far away. And but yeah, I can't see now. It's like crazy, crazy, crazy. Um how fast things in our bodies change, right? Okay. So, I will be your angel. First in, last out. Our lifelines sometimes need a lifeline too. I'm sorry that you have to see me this way, but I will be your angel. That was the note that I left for my coworkers, my friends, the paramedics, and the firefighters who would hear the dispatch tones and respond, only to find me, a colleague, the caller. It was cruel, I know. A Scorpio through and through, my exit was dramatic. Still, I didn't mean to ruin their sleep at 4:20 a.m. 13 years earlier. The first day of paramedic school, she walked in wearing a crisp black EMS uniform, shiny new shoes, and her trauma shears clipped in backwards. An obvious rookie. At 5'2", she wasn't exactly an intimidating figure, but I figured that she could probably hold her own. During initial assessments, the captain called out, "Ladies, you don't have to do as many pull ups as the men." And without hesitation, she shot back, "Do I look helpless to you?" And she jumped up to the bar and did 5 more than what was required. It was at that exact moment that I discovered two things. Spraying Dr. Pepper out of your nose burns like hell, and she was unlike anyone that I'd ever met. That was how Amy always talked about the story of how we met, followed by her favorite part, the year that she relentlessly invited me to camping trips, parties, dinners, anything else that she could think of, only for me to tell her no. I was a single mom of a 3-year old driving 150 miles round trip to be at school every third day, and accomplishing this goal meant no distractions. I had tunnel vision, and she never seemed to mind, though. Every time I turned her down, she just laughed it off and tried again. It was 2 weeks before we graduated, a Friday. Normally, that meant she'd ask me to go camping, her go to suggestion, which I always turned down, but this time was different. "We should go to Station 4," she said, leaning casually against the classroom table like it wasn't a big deal. Station 4 was a gay nightclub in Dallas, Texas. She motioned towards our classmates, the small but mighty group of LGBTQ plus folks who had managed to find each other in a sea of 30 recruits. And then she pointed to Rhonda, who was cisgender and seemingly terrified of everything. Rhonda gave an awkward wave like she wasn't entirely sure what she just agreed to, but knew it was safer than saying no. We were the only femmes in the class, two women navigating a world dominated by men, where rookie was practically tattooed on our foreheads and every misstep felt amplified. Amy was fearless, though. She'd call out anyone who underestimated her or made assumptions. She had this way of owning space without apology when she was in uniform. I kept my head down and focused on my work, but that day something shifted. I didn't have Erin that weekend for the first time, and for the first time, I realized that I was going to say yes no matter what she asked me. Because the thought of graduating and never seeing her again had been gnawing at me for weeks. creeping in during the long drives home, or when I caught myself laughing at something she'd said. The idea of losing her felt heavier than I was willing to admit, even to myself. So I said yes to Station 4. The truth was, I had no idea what I was walking into. I'd never been to a gay club before, never seen a real drag queen in person, and if I'm being honest, I'd never been with a woman either. By the time we pulled into the parking lot, my nerves were doing gymnastics. The bass from inside the club seemed to pulse through the asphalt. It was vibrating up through my shiny, still too new shoes. She parked the car and turned to me with that signature grin of hers, the one that was equal parts mischief and charm. You ready? Her tone was light, but her eyes were searching. Hell yes, I lied, which was probably unnecessary because I'm sure she could hear my heart pounding. But inside, it was like stepping into another world. The music was loud, the air was thick with energy and glitter, and everywhere I looked, there were people unapologetically themselves. One of them winked at me as she passed, and I felt my face flush. Amy leaned in close, her voice barely cutting through the music. You look like you've seen a ghost. No, I said, trying to sound calm. Just a fabulous giant. She laughed, and I couldn't help but join her. It wasn't just the drag queens that were larger than life, it was everything: the music, the lights, the way people danced like they were untouchable. For someone who'd spent so much of her life keeping her head down, it was overwhelming in the best way. And then there was her. She grabbed my hand and she led me out on the dance floor without asking and without hesitation. Her confidence was magnetic. I was stiff and awkwardly. I shifted from foot to foot, but she didn't. She just said, relax, with her face close to mine. No one here is judging you. I looked at her, bathed in the neon glow of the club lights, and for the first time, I let myself believe it. She didn't just lead me onto the dance floor. She pulled me into her orbit. The crowd was a blur of sequins, sweat, and joy. The music's bass thumped so hard it felt like it was rewiring my heartbeat. Amy was already moving, like the music was just a continuation of her own pulse. She didn't do that awkward side to side sway most people resort to when they don't know what to do with their limbs. She danced like she owned the place. And I, on the other hand, was all elbows and nerves. She laughed when I tried to mimic her, spinning me around before I could protest. You dance like you're dodging bullets, she teased, but there was no malice in it. You know, maybe I am, I shot back, though I was smiling. She leaned in close, the scent of her cologne cutting through the chaos around us. Again, nobody's aiming at you, rookie. I don't know if it was the music, the flashing lights, or the fact that her hand stayed firmly on mine the entire time, but for once I stopped overthinking. She let go of my hand and threw her arms in the air, daring me to follow her lead, and for some reason, maybe because she made it seem so easy, I did. I don't know how long we danced, but eventually I wasn't trying anymore. I was just moving, laughing, and letting go in a way that I hadn't in years. Who am I kidding? Ever. The highlight of the night was when a drag queen tall enough to block out half of the strobe lights sauntered over to us. She wore a sequined gown that sparkled like a disco ball and had a blonde wig so voluminous it probably required its own zip code. Oh, honey, she purred, looking me up and down. Who let this snack into my house without the proper welcome? Amy burst out laughing as the queen took my hand, twirled me around, and dipped me like we were on the set of Dancing with the Stars. I squealed, not entirely sure if I was more embarrassed or delighted, and Amy was doubled over by the time the queen helped me back up. You're precious, she said, patting my cheek. before disappearing back into the crowd like some kind of glittery fairy godmother. She's right, Amy said, still grinning. And I didn't say anything. But I couldn't help but notice the way she was looking at me. Like maybe, just maybe, she saw something in me that I hadn't learned to see in myself just yet. And by the time the night ended, my cheeks hurt from smiling, my feet were sore from dancing, and my whole world felt a little bit bigger. Little did I know that in just a couple of weeks we'd be loading a U-Haul with both of our names on it, fulfilling a tongue-in-cheek U-Haul lesbian trope before I even realized what it meant. For the uninitiated, that's the playful stereotype in the LGBT plus community where people joke that lesbians move in together on their second date. Of course, it's more of an affectionate cultural in joke than a universal truth, but in our case, we leaned right into it without even trying. What I didn't realize at the time was just how hard she'd fought to make that night happen. Amy was terrified of drag queens, genuinely, and clowns, lots of makeup and glitter. But her determination to show me something new, more colorful, overshadowed her fear. She wanted me to see that we had every right to dance, to explore, and to love openly, even if the reality of our situation was still complicated. For a lot of us, it still wasn't entirely safe to be seen as anything more than friends or roommates or coworkers. The scars of past decades lingered from Stonewall in 1969, where people first stood up and said enough, to the AIDS crisis in the 80s and the 90s, which brought both devastating loss and a fierce sense of unity to our community. Yes, over the years, we'd won some battles, more visibility, better legal protections, even the legalization of same sex marriage in many places. But the world was still a place where we had to look over our shoulders if we dared to hold hands in the wrong neighborhood, or if we let our eyes linger too long on each other in the grocery store. Amy knew that all too well, which was why public displays of affection were largely off limits. But that night, at Station 4, surrounded by glitter and music, we forgot to be scared. We danced until closing time, and for a few blissful hours, it felt like the rest of the world couldn't touch us. When we finally stumbled back into the sidewalk, panting and laughing under the buzzing neon sign, I realized I had never seen her look happier. Despite her own anxieties, she had carried me over the back. A couple of weeks later, we were loading boxes like an inside joke come to life, proving that sometimes the stereotypes might just have a grain of truth in them. And I, for one, was perfectly okay with that as my engagement ring sparkled in the sunlight. Aaron was 3 years old, a ball of endless energy and sharp wit, even then. The first time that he met Amy, we had taken him bowling. She tried to look serious as she lined up her shot, but the ball went straight into the gutter, and without missing a beat, Aaron formed an L on his forehead and yelled, "Loser!" It was timed so perfectly it caught us off guard, and I burst out laughing, and Amy doubled over, and Aaron grinned from ear to ear. At that moment, the two of them clicked like puzzle pieces, and for a second, I forgot about how their new relationship was. It felt like they'd been best buddies all along. Time seemed to accelerate from there. Fast forward flashes of life's chaos and surprises. I remember the robotic raptor I was so sure that Aaron would love, watching him chase it around the living room until we were all breathless from laughter. And then the day that Amy and I watched him strum his very first guitar, a bright blue Dimebag Darrell edition that he called Denise. It sounded incredible, and Aaron, never one to do things half-heartedly, plucked out a few awkward chords with the determination of a future rock star. The WWE tickets in Dallas because, of course, he loved the larger-than-life theatrics. And after that, there was a humble little cot that he slept on when we uprooted everything to move to Oklahoma. The one that we brought home after Hurricane Katrina turned the Gulf Coast inside out. We spent almost 3 months driving back and forth, first for 2 brutal weeks helping recover bodies, and then returning repeatedly to support all the relief efforts. And through it all, she somehow found time to coordinate one of the biggest surprises of my life, picking Aaron up on the sly and delivering him to me when I least expected it, flashing that triumphant grin of hers the whole time. She was always good at that, making you feel like the most important person in the room with just one grand gesture, or sometimes just a simple, quiet one. Something's not right. We need to go down there and make sure they're okay. Kaylee had tried to call a few minutes earlier, but as usual, the cell signal inside that old trailer was too weak, and I had a knot in the pit of my stomach and it was refusing to go away. And just as I was trying to brush off my worry, Sarah burst through the door. Her cheeks were bright red and she was panting like she'd sprinted the entire way. Aaron got caught on a hook, she managed to say. I stared at her, not comprehending. What do you mean he got caught on a hook? He jumped off the dock and now he's stuck and he can't move. That was all Amy, Cindy, and I needed to hear. We grabbed whatever tools we thought might help, like needle nose pliers, random supplies from the neighbors, and we piled into the car. And the drive was a blur. We skidded to a stop at the dock and leapt out before the engines even cut off. And there he was at the far end of the dock, barely able to keep his head above the waves. Exhaustion radiated from him. He was frightened and fighting so hard not to go under. My heart lurched as Amy and I sprinted down the wooden boards in about 30 seconds flat. By 31, Amy was in the water. She swam around him, her arms sweeping under the surface, trying to feel what had him stuck. But when she came up for air, she shook her head. I don't feel anything, she said to Aaron. Are you sure that something's hooked on you? And Aaron groaned, and tears were mixing with the lake water, and he said, I can't move. And in a flash, both Amy and I realized what was really happening. And though we didn't say it out loud just yet, Amy said gently, okay, I'm going to lean you back so I can see better. And if it hurts or you need me to stop, you just tell me. And she eased him onto his back up out of the water. And that's when we saw the swollen, angry marks on his arm. He hadn't been snagged on a hook at all. He'd been bitten by a water moccasin. The venom must have paralyzed him. No wonder he felt like he couldn't move. Working together, we half lifted, half floated him to the nearest ladder and hoisted him onto the dock. I dove back in and swam to the shore as fast as I could, yelling for Cindy to call 911. Eric's Aaron's father was also a paramedic and he was on duty that day. We knew we'd need a helicopter transport to Dallas for treatment. By the time I made it to the back to the end of the dock, Aaron's eyes were glazed over. He was trembling. He was on the verge of a seizure. And I knelt beside him, brushing his wet hair off of his forehead. It's going to be okay, I whispered, fighting back panic. But he met my gaze and his voice shook and he said, I know, Mommy. Nanny told me that it would be. And my heart sank because Nanny, his grandmother, had passed away 4 years earlier. Hearing him say that felt like stepping into another world. The helicopter touched down in a roar of wind and noise. I rode in the front. I couldn't see Aaron, but I at least knew that I was with him. Amy and Charles stayed behind, forced to wait. Hours passed before Amy finally arrived. She'd had to scramble for a friend to drive her all the way there, even though we kept her updated on Aaron's improving condition. She never truly forgave herself for not being right there beside him in the helicopter with me. It weighed on her for a long time, and I understood why. In the end, Aaron pulled through, but that day remains burned into my memory, a stark reminder of how quickly life can and does veer into chaos. Chaos always seemed to simmer beneath the surface. I did my best to shield Aaron from it, but when you're constantly walking on eggshells, it's hard for a kid not to notice. 5 years before it all fell apart, Amy's mother had passed away, and she never truly found a way to navigate that grief. In the time that followed, she threw herself into her work, deploying to Hurricane Katrina relief, tackling grim emergency calls, anything to stay in motion. Meanwhile, I'd been diagnosed with lupus and I wasn't able to work any longer, which just added another layer of stress. In about a year after that day on the dock, when the unthinkable happened and we lost Amy to suicide, a terrible travesty that stole her laughter, her surprises, the spontaneous guitar solos, all those little things that made her who she was. Aaron was only 14, 2 weeks shy of starting high school, when he dressed in a white suit and helped me carry her casket. He even led the funeral procession on her motorcycle, an image forever seared into my memory. The devastation was only compounded the day the police released her final letter. She didn't even mention me. His eyes were red with hurt, and my heart burst. She had barely mentioned me, except to say that I was frightened of her for what she'd done, and the rest was aimed at her EMS family. Apologies and promises to the friends and the colleagues that she adored, and in their eyes she would forever be immortalized as a paragon. But that's another story for another time. A story of heartbreak and consequences of love and loss, and of a woman who gave so much of herself that she couldn't anymore. Amid all the love, laughter, and profound connections that threaded our lives together, Amy's story is a somber reminder that mental health struggles can lie hidden beneath even the brightest smiles. It underscores the importance of reaching out to friends, to families, to professionals before the weight becomes too great to bear alone. Honest communication can be the lifeline that prevents a moment of despair from becoming an irreversible tragedy, and professional support, whether through counseling, therapy, or crisis hotlines, can bridge the gap when personal efforts and community and care are not enough. Above all, it is crucial to remember that you do not have to fight your battles on your own. Help is always out there waiting for you to take the courageous step of saying, I need someone to listen. Signed off till the last rose dies. And that is that part of the story. Thank you, Crystal. Also, and Lotta, I hope I say that right, for being here. I just want to take a couple of, breaths in between. And I do want to thank all of you for sitting here with me and listening. I have this part of the story is more intense for sure. And so definitely if you're sensitive, if you're triggered or any of those things, just know that I wrote very vividly, not, you know, maybe as vivid as I could, but as vivid as I could at the same time about what we experienced together um, a few days leading up to and to Amy's death. This is in a chapter. It's called in a book, Beyond Boundaries, Thriving in Life's Gray Zone, with 20 or so other authors sharing different stories. Everybody's story is different, but there are survival techniques, and it's a wonderful book. The Seasoning. No one said a word as I nearly ran down the glossy hall that I knew like the back of my hand. I had been bringing patients into Trauma Bay 1 for years. Besides, amongst cohorts, when an incident involved your own, there was a silent oath in place: stick to the facts and only intervene when you absolutely had to, which is why they didn't mention that my wife wasn't alone. Her eyes were wide and frantic, unable to fully meet my own gaze that was immediately filled with blinding tears of rage. The door thudded loudly behind me as I immediately walked away, leaving her with her lover to continue feeding her ice cubes. After all, activated charcoal does tend to dehydrate a person, and we didn't want that. No, we didn't want that at all. She overdosed again, or something similar, I told my twin brother as I paced back and forth on the sidewalk in the front of the hospital. I took another long drag off of my cigarette, allowing myself to get lost in the sound of the sizzling paper and the tobacco as it burned increasingly closer to my fingers. I lit another one and continued carving a path with my footsteps like so many others had done before me while they processed whatever had brought them to any and every hospital. USA. When I went back into her room about an hour later, she was alone. The sickening mixture of vomit and perfume assaulted my senses, and I could feel my body revolt and prepare itself to flee again. But this time, I took in a deep breath and I used it to build resolve to remain still. There were no words exchanged. I stood across the room, my body pressed against the hard wall. The caseworker peeked her head in and motioning for me to come out inside into the hall. We discussed Amy's history of attempted suicide, and she assured me that a 72-hour hold would take place, and during that time, a full psychological evaluation would be performed, as was the law. She handed me some pamphlets of organizations that could support me if I so chose, ones that I regularly volunteered at. No way that I was going to remove the veil into our own personal lives. This was humiliating enough. At least the first time, Amy had the courtesy to do this in a different jurisdiction where she didn't know anyone. Much later, after talking with the caseworker, police officers, nurses, and doctors multiple times, I was hit with a cold slap of a startling decision. They were releasing her. On second thought, I realized that I wasn't surprised. Not really. Amy was very believable, and she knew exactly what to say for her assessors to believe that she had only felt overwhelmed for a moment, and that she didn't really want to harm herself or anyone else. And with that, I was handed another stack of paperwork to do, a follow up on our own, and we were sent on our way. With the click of my seatbelt, our eyes met for the first time since I had initially arrived, and where there had been the effects of drugs and adrenaline in hers before, there was now determination and a plan that didn't include either one of us living out a full life. If I cannot have you, no one can, she had said, the very first cliche of a string that I would experience in the terrible events to follow. It would be close to exactly 72 hours later, to the tune of 4 a.m., that my shoeless feet would pound off of the unseasonably warm pavement, carrying me to safety within the glow of my best friend's house just a few blocks away. It's always amazed me how many things can remain even the most hidden behind even the most paper thin walls. Glass houses are still somehow able to cast shadows in just the right places for preservation and protection. I can still hear the glass shattering scream that escaped my larynx when Sarah's phone rang shortly after my appearance, and my son's father, also a pre hospital care technician, verified my worst fears. That time, Amy hadn't come chasing after me. That time, she had given up, leaving myself and our 14-year-old son to navigate the shrapnel of a 12-gauge Buckeye shotgun on our front porch, paired with the weight of the life that she left behind. We carried her casket together a few weeks later over white pea gravel to her final resting place. Disbelief had run rampant across all of the civil service departments. They had all but closed the city down. Every fire engine and ambulance from across the Tri County area was there. The air ambulances flew overhead, and we wept, the guttural weeping of the likes that I had never known. In a compromise with her father, even though she had been an atheist, the family clergyman dredged us along with his choice of scripture. With a transitional shudder, I checked out of my body. I was floating above myself. Higher and higher I rose. Both parts of me were conscious and aware of visceral processes happening. In other words, even in this split, there was no escaping the pain. As I ascended, I could feel the blazing sun against my back like Icarus. I was too close to the sun, and my resilience was melting faster than wax. The words, "Your son needs you," whispered in my ear, would bring me back together with a slam. Well meaning friends and families, one by one, walked by with their best words and tokens of love. "I'm so sorry for your loss. She's not suffering anymore. If you need anything." Each sound, each tickle of hot breath against my ears felt like a Brillo pad, agitating my frayed nerves in the worst way. My secrets being buried under a mound of goodbyes. Foolishly, I had believed that I could keep them buried far below the surface of the naked eye. After all, no one really cared about the truth or knew how to process any of it anyway. The lack of emotional processing had been the missing ingredient the entire time. Amy was the fourth paramedic to take her own life that year in our small community, and I refused to share the full story and have her remembered as anything less than a hero, because that was the full truth of her life. It has been 13 years. So why now, you ask? I am no longer naive enough to believe that my truth is any less important to be shared or that the full truth takes away from the heroism of our lives. My son has grown with children of his own. Legacy is carried on the wings of vulnerability and authenticity. Their destination is freedom, and we are all worthy of the experience. These are the untold chapters of mental health stigma and how the consequences unfolded in our lives. Like a baby during a colic, relieving car ride, she was asleep within minutes. Her body had been through the ringer, and there were still remnants, effects of the barbiturates, anxiety medications, and sleeping meds that she had taken, a count of around 300 that she had ingested with alcohol to paint the picture just a little better. All of the above exited her body, creating a pungent pool in the floorboard of my brand new car. She wouldn't wake up for 6 to 7 hours. It took me four of them to slowly drag her from the car into the house. As my 5'2" and threatened me, and I wouldn't antagonize her. I knew she was serious, but at the same time, I ridiculously felt safe in my own mind. She couldn't even keep her eyes open. And in the moments of her being out cold, I took action steps for the safety of us both. I went through the house and I bagged up every medication and supplement we had. I put them quietly in the dryer, not 3 feet from where she laid. We were house sitting for our landlords next door at the same time. I had also removed the one firearm in our possession to their house. I had masterfully hid it in their spare craft room underneath the mattress of the bed. I had done this as quickly as lightning so that she wouldn't wake up and find that I was gone. We were well into the first 24 hours. To get I had managed to get her clean and into new clothes. The dried activated charcoal was like chiseling concrete off of a rose petal. She was beginning to stir more frequently and with more vigor. Her threats were becoming more intense. I personally called a private EMS service that Amy worked for to have her transferred to a different hospital than before, believing that they would surely keep her this time. Again, the systems in place failed us both. Amy would act right as rain in the presence of the hospital staff, and she would answer their questions. She would even smile. And when they exited the room, her entire demeanor would change and she would begin to threaten me, sneering, snarling, and even growling at me. When I went into the hallway to discuss her behavior with the nurse, Amy faked a seizure. They knew that she was faking, but they gave her Valium anyway. That was to aid in calming her down so that I could manage her until the facility she needed to be admitted into had an opening. And this was said to be approximately 2 days away. It was past nightfall now, again, and she was awake and fully aware. The IV fluids they had given her had aided in her returning to a normal physical state. She had taken the keys as soon as we were outside of the hospital doors. She drove to a little taco fast food joint and we ordered through the drive-through. I wasn't hungry. I was numb and afraid. How was I in this situation? I felt the cliche of a lifetime moving on the bumps on my arm. She drove us under to a park and we sat under a tree. Eat, because this is going to be your last meal. I took the lumps of the food down as large crocodile tears ceaselessly flowed down my face, drenching the top of my shirt. All the while, my brain was scanning, analyzing, and evaluating for any moment that would serve as a gateway out. I also want to add that Amy was under a medical doctor's care for her depression and anxiety. We had been advised to follow through on cognitive behavior therapy and other modalities that were blown off and seen as beneath the realm of what was going to be helpful by her. I thought I had known what it felt like to want something so badly you would give anything to receive it. I thought I knew what it felt like to have that something in your grasp and have it slip away. I thought I knew a lot of things. I thought I had talked her down, changed her mind. She finally seemed calm and convinced me that she had returned to her senses, and I was so very tired. Though I knew that she could be lying, my eyes betrayed me and closed for 1 second. I had felt her climb into the bed beside me and lay down, and then, like a jack in the box, she sprang up. "Where is my gun?" she growled furiously. She began ransacking the house, looking everywhere. I was sitting up on the bed, but I was in a fetal position all the same. Pure terror was pulsing through my body, and I began to pray and plead with the universe. "You took it over there, didn't you?" And she left out the back door, headed to the neighbor's house where I had earlier hidden it. I grabbed the keys to the car that I had managed to wrestle away from her earlier and also hid. I ran through the house and out the front door. I slowed down and shut the door quietly. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, and I dropped the keys on the floorboard. Oh, no, no, no. I reached down to grab them, and I rose back up, and the rearview mirror revealed to me an image that I will never forget. In the dim moonlight stood the solid silhouette of someone that I did not recognize in the least, with a shotgun pointed at my head, and I began to sob out my love for my son and my family. I could see my life running through the hourglass of existence. I accepted my fate as she opened the car door. There are defining moments in our life when we have seismic shifts in our understanding of things outside of causality. You see, fate is something predetermined all at once, and as we walked back through the house and she was telling me how fast and painless it was about to be, I knew destiny was what I would choose. And when she turned around and our eyes met where a fawn had been, a mother empowered by survival instincts now stood. "I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is my handle, here is my spout. When I get all steamed up, hear me shout. Tip me over and pour me out." I sang this as a child. I was boiling mad, and it surged through my veins. It swelled my muscles with strength, and I managed to get the gun away and cram it between the mattress where I sat over it. And bubbling questions were on the rise. Was I going to have to use the gun myself to get out of this predicament? And I began praying even harder, rocking back and forth and pleading, "Please release me," I begged over and over and over again. And Amy, too, was maniacally seeking an escape. And in a moment that met both of our needs in the most symbolic of ways, both of our most wanted desires were delivered at the same time. In her desperation, she had walked out into the hallway, slamming the door to the room so hard that the door facing had come unhinged, and I physically heard, "Now, run." And I didn't hesitate. Like a coiled rattlesnake, I was up and over her and outside this time, rattling myself as it were, no longer being silent, but crying and screaming as I ran. Rattlesnakes have a remarkable adaptability to their own venom. And as I entered the gray zone, I learned that we as humans do too. Persian poet Hafiz wrote, "Do not surrender your grief so quickly. Let it cut you more deeply. Let it season you the way very few human or divine things, ingredients can." I did. Intuitively in every way in the months and the years to follow. I didn't hide my struggle or my pain. I wore it in the form of a razor's edge sliding across my skin. I drank it in the form of alcohol. I tasted it with nicotine, drugs, and food. I felt it in the form of a sexual assault some 4 months later, having been drugged by Amy's lover's partner, whom I had sought out for revenge. I danced with grief, and it burned me deeply enough to demand that I choose death myself or create a new identity. Creating the courage to look deeply within is an enthralling experience. When we look through the veil of cosmic illusion and lay our resistances down, we become open to receive grief's message. There is no death, only transformation. Every tear that we cry is a dazzling story and the return of a soul love that lies deep within the limitless waves of our compassionate human hearts. Though it feels as if we will but wither away, the ocean is plentiful and our spirit does not perish. Death, just as empathy and love, makes all equal. It makes every moment precious. The uncertainty of its time can free us from procrastination, free us from the illusion that we can keep putting off living until a future time. The earnest thoughts of one's own death can liberate us from the layers and the masks that we wear. I choose to reinvent myself, something now that I do by free will daily through creating my own joys and freedoms. Today, I help entrepreneurs create brands that are authentic and beautifully crafted from their core passions. I live audaciously, giving others the permission to do the same. My son is also a paramedic and entrepreneur. We are survivors, forged in the fire, and reimagined into thriving individuals living our best lives. If you or someone you know is suffering with forms of depression, post traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety, grief, or thoughts of self harm, know that you are not alone. You can thrive in the gray. It is difficult at times to see and listen through the murk of ourselves, but there is nothing wrong with you, only pain that needs processing through skills that you do not yet have. Or perhaps miscommunication between the chemicals in your brain and your body. If you remember only one thing from this chapter, remember to breathe. Your breath is the body's way to communicate safety to your brain, whether your body feels it is safe or not. And this will allow you access to your executive function and make decisions that can support you in living. Your breath will also help you to restart your body in any recovery. You can breathe in with me now. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're doing great. You really do have a 100% success rate. And all of the universe celebrates you and your existence. Don't be afraid to ask for help, no matter the situation, captive or captive holder, for lack of a better word off the top of my brain. And that is part of our story. And so today, 15 years ago, I did run and I did scream. And I survived. And today I thrive. Thank you all again for coming along on this ride with me today and celebrating the decision and choices that I made in my life, the prices that we pay in this life. You don't have to hide them. Honestly, you can't. So just share, be transparent, be vulnerable, talk about, share your story. Because the only thing that you're ever going to hear, the only thing that I've ever heard when I share my many stories are me too. I will see you all again very soon with new exciting things on our project, Sing Your Song. Until then, I love you all.
The wound is where the light begins. The fracture tells the truth. I carry every scar within, the proof I made it through. You can't erase the breaking. You can't deny the pain, but every wound's a witness that I'm here again. I am wounded witness, I am blood and bone. Every mark remembers, but I am not alone. I am torn and tethered, but I'm still alive. Wounded witness, this is how I rise. The silence tried to swallow me. The shadows tried to stay, but I became the echo that never fades away. You can't erase the breaking. You can't deny the pain, but scars are not my ending. They're the story that I keep. The body holds the memory, but the soul